confiscated it, and then later sold it back to the British to help fund the war effort here.
Smart.
And the next time you go to your dentist and they complain about your tea consumption, please remind them that you are merely getting your fluoride. That's right, tea is one of the only naturally occurring sources of fluoride. A pound of tea contains more caffeine than a pound of coffee. But a cup of coffee contains more caffeine than a cup of tea. That's because it only takes a teaspoon of tea, that's the term teaspoon, to make a cup of tea. And it takes a tablespoon of coffee or 3 teaspoons to make a cup of coffee. So pound for pound, you're getting 200 cups of tea per pound and only 67 cups of coffee per pound. Now if you look over on the left, you'll see our green giant harvester. We got it parked up close so folks like y'all can take a gander at it, get some pictures. And next to it, you will see our Guinness Book of World Records largest glass of sweet iced tea. We partnered up with Summerville, South Carolina, and donated our tea because Summerville is considered the birthplace of sweet tea. And we entered the Guinness Book of World Records for about 2 months, and then Chick-fil-A beat us. So it took us about 6 months to construct a new cup, and then we ended up beating Chick-fil-A by 50 gallons.
Yes.
And we are still the world record holders.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. That was super cute, was it?
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Am I gonna? Yeah, please.
We did that. Any questions?
You said that you have like 100 and some varieties?
We have over 360 varieties of Camellia sinensis. The only thing that really, the only real difference between the varieties is the leaf shape and structure. You may have some wider leaves, some are more narrow, some may have a little bit more fiber in them, but they're all Camellia sinensis. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned there's only a few, well, about 70 acres planted. Is there any plans to grow more acreage into?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Of the 127 acres, we have, of course, 20 set aside for the factory and gift shop and all that. And each year, we're introducing more and more and more until all the empty fields that you see when we're driving through will eventually be filled with tea.
Is there plans to introduce new varieties?
No, ma'am.
And this COVID thing, how back did that set you into your
We were able to plant new plants, but we weren't able to do cuttings to cultivate new plants. And that's called clonal tea in the tea industry. It's just because things were so wonky, and we had some people that didn't want to show up to work, even though we weren't restricted. We didn't have any restrictions because we're agriculture, but we had to offer that option, and with the lack of workforce, we're only able to do so much.
What is the reason for so many varieties?
Well, sir, those were the original varieties that were collected from Pinehurst Plantation. So we just stuck with what we had, and
But there's no difference in the tea itself.
no, sir. What affects the flavor of the tea is the climate, the amount of rainfall, the amount of humidity. We could take these same plants, dig them up, transplant them down to Miami, Florida, let's say, and within a year and a half, you'll get a different tasting cup of tea, even though it's the same variety, and it's all because of the climate.
So how do you flavor the tea?
Flavoring the tea. Everybody always wants to know which field is the peach tea field. We don't have a peach tea field. When tea is processed, it is starved for oxygen and wants to absorb the flavor of anything that it's exposed to. So whenever we want to make peach tea, for instance, we have our own Colonel Sanders secret recipe. We'll take our black tea, we'll mist it down with our natural peach flavoring, we'll seal it up in a barrel, we'll tumble the tea and leave it there for 72 hours. Then it'll go through our quality control process, so if it's peachy enough, we're good to go. If it's not peachy, if it's too peachy, we can add more black tea to it to dilute that flavor. And, it's the same thing with like our mint tea. We'll add natural spearmint to it. If you want to pull a good April Fool's joke on somebody next year, get you a couple of tea bags, open them up, put them in a Ziploc bag with a bar of dial soap, seal it up, give it a week, and you will have soapy tea. I'm so glad my grandmother didn't know this, because I could outrun her in a bar of lye soap, but I could not outrun a cup of tea. And I will deny that I told you this until the day I die. So you can't blame me on your behavior later on. Well, if there aren't any more questions, we can go on ahead and get on the trolley, and I'll show you the fields that we were just planted in the growth progression.
Based on the heavy adopted. Green tea, black tea, that's all. Yep, that's it.
A particularly fine cut. The amount of oxidation in the next step determines the type of tea, black, green, and oolong. To make oolong and black tea, broken leaves are spread evenly to a depth of 2 inches onto an oxidation bed. Here, the newly broken leaf, with all of its exposed juices, travels ever so slowly from one end of the belt to the other, a distance of 28 feet. During this time, a complex chemical event takes place, which changes the broken leaf from a greenish color at the start to a brownish color at the end. This is the miracle of tea making, the point at which tea develops all of its rich color and flavor. For black tea, the time on the oxidation bed is 50 minutes. That period of time will produce the rich amber color and the full-bodied flavor we enjoy as black tea. For oolong tea, the type of tea served in most Chinese restaurants, the time will be only 15 minutes. That will give us a lighter golden brown color in the cup and a delicate nut-like flavor so good with Chinese food. As for green tea, there is no time, 0 minutes, on the withering bed and on the oxidation bed. The minute it comes in from the field, it is steamed to stop any possible oxidation, put through the rotovane, and then immediately into a dryer. With no oxidation whatsoever, green tea is going to be very pale in color and quite delicate in flavor. To stop the oxidation process quickly, whether it's black tea, oolong tea, or green tea, we put our tea into an enclosed dryer, where it travels very slowly back and forth at 250 degrees for 25 minutes. During this time, all the goodness of flavor will be totally sealed and preserved in our tiny tea leaves The only way the flavor can be released is immersion in boiling water. At this point in the process, our finished tea product has lost nearly 97% of its moisture and 80% of its weight. In other words, every 5 pounds of fresh leaf brought in from the field yields only 1 pound of finished tea. After the tea exits the dryer, it contains a large amount of stalk and fiber left over from the harvesting process. To remove all of this material, the tea is passed through 2 major sieves. As the tea falls through the first sieve, most of the stalk and fiber are removed. In the second sieve, more stalk and fiber are separated. As our tea exits the second sieve, it still contains a very small amount of stalk and fiber. To remove the last of this material, we're going to use the magic of static electricity to lift this residue, which is lighter than the tea. The static electricity is created by plastic reels brushing up against felt pads. Finally, here comes our beautiful finished tea, all ready to become a part of our American classic tea. Only about 20 hours ago, our tea was growing in the field. Now we have this beautiful pure black tea. Think of all the pleasure this tea is going to give in the cup or glass.
So as you've seen, the making of tea is a very special process. We hope you've learned a lot.
And thanks so much for being with us today.